Madam Mayor, it is 6:03 and we are live.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the City Commission work session regarding our strategic priorities plan, Thursday, July 20th, 2023 at 6 p.m. Can we have the roll call, please?
Yes, Mayor Betty Resch,
Here.
Vice Mayor Christopher McVoy,
Here.
Commissioner Sarah Maliga,
Present.
Commissioner Kimberly Stokes,
Here.
Commissioner Reynaldo Diaz.
Here.
Thank you very much. Okay, Vice Mayor McVoy will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So tonight we're going to be discussing the strategic plan. And before we get started, I have to make a comment. As during the past couple of years, Commissioner Malega has been saying, we need a strategic plan. And my concept of the strategic plan was, and I thought I brought it with me, was a postcard that had these 4 pillars and ideas. No one ever shared with us that there was some sort of plan. So I was a little surprised when you were so adamant about it, because I really thought it was just a nice postcard. So I was, when I read, I want to thank the city manager and the city staff, because as we read, a lot of work went into this. And I just want to thank you ahead of time, because it's something that we can actually get our teeth into and get going. Thank you.
So there's no postcard?
I left it in my office. I left the postcard in my office. It's a nice postcard.
I'll point out that I run 3 major nonprofits, and then between 2 of those 3 and the TPA, we're doing strategic planning. So why not just add another one to the mix?
Well, yeah, because my understanding, which was why I'm being educated and gladly, was that it was just, it was aspirational. This is what we'd like to do, but you never heard much about, this is how we're going to do it. So that's why I'm excited about tonight.
Essentially a business plan for the city's future.
Right. And you being our business person. So take it away.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for your comments tonight. So I guess I'm about 1.5 years in as the city manager. And so in my first few months or so, it was very clear that the commission wanted to express their priorities for the city and creating a new direction for the city. And I also heard comments from the staff, the team, who said we're excited about the new leadership and wanted to know what their direction was to move the city towards the goals in which you see us going to. So I'm so excited today to bring this strategic plan, proposed strategic plan to you for consideration as we now somewhat formalize what in the most part, what we've already been doing, because we've heard from you and your direction and the things you would like to see the city move towards. So this formalizes that. And as we navigate through the presentation, you'll see there some areas where we've already began the work towards certain goals and objectives. And you see some areas that have already been completed, some things already in progress, and then some things that we propose to do to meet those goals and objectives. So without further ado, I'll move forward in the presentation, and I have my friend Anthony putting the presentation on the board. So just to give background, we've had a number of conversations regarding objectives and priorities for the city. Our first workshop was before I became city manager, you had a workshop in October of 2021, and you talked about the direction of the city. And then we've further refined that in April of 2022 And then we had further discussion regarding ARPA funds and allocations in August of 2022. So with all those discussions, it helped form this proposed plan. And so we'll go through that now. So what we want to accomplish today. So today we just want to finalize those key strategic priorities, goals, and action plan to lead the city towards its vision for decision-making and also fostering effective organizational fiscal planning. So as I said before, we've talked about these issues in the previous discussion. So this is just formalizing and documenting what we say we want to do. So the role of the City Commission, as you already know, you're responsible for establishing the city's budget, setting the millage rate, adopting ordinances, resolutions, and other policy directives necessary for the operation of the city. And then the role of the city manager to run the day-to-day operations of the city and implement those policies as the City Commission sets. Next slide, please. So let's talk about the purpose of the strategic priorities plan. It is a function that help drive our decision-making for the City Commission to establish its goals, its vision, as well as meet the needs of the community. That's what it's all about. And it also serves as a communication tool for the commission to communicate to the city manager direction and guide me in how you would like to see the city to be. And I will communicate that to the staff. And then ultimately, that is communicated to the public, which is our ultimate goal, to meet the needs of the public. The purpose of the plan is also to establish clear guidance. So the commission provide that guidance to the city manager, and the city manager would also engage the team to carry out those goals. Next slide. And also it helps prioritize the organizational work, the limited resources that we have. It also serves an accountability tool for performance. So there are mechanisms that will guide us to ensure that we are progressing in those goals. So what are the components of the strategic priorities plan? First, the priority objectives are supported by achievable goals. There are also action items for department teams to implement. In addition to that, the estimated budget allocations for each action item is listed where applicable. And hopefully tonight, we want to also weave in a discussion of the ARPA funds, because the ARPA funds are critical to meeting these goals, and much of those funds are used towards that effort. So tonight, we also want to share just a little snippet of the ARPA funds and where we stand tonight on that. And then on Monday at the next work session, we'll dig deeper into how we further allocate those funds. And then also, one of the components is to provide specific performance targets and timelines. And then ultimately, we need to, of course, show that accountability by periodic evaluation and status reporting on how we're moving forward in those action items that we agree upon, and then also keep us accountable and ensure that we are meeting the goals. Next slide. So what are the steps in developing the plan? Well, as I mentioned before, the first thing we did was identified key priority areas. The commission had a discussion October 21st, 2021. And so you established those key priorities. The second step, we established key priority areas as a body. So mentioned before, in April of 2022, we had the workshop and then further discussion in August regarding the ARPA funds, so we can allocate funding to those goals that we've already have determined. And step 3, we develop goals and objectives. So this document shows goals and objectives So those are agreed upon to meet and agreed upon in those key areas. So it's pretty much saying what we will do to accomplish those goals and what we will do. And so the next step 4, is to develop the action plan to say what we will do to accomplish those goals. And so in that process, we engage the department directors in developing the process, and we prepared the proposed strategic plan based on those key priorities. And so at this point, this is where we are today, saying, Commission, we need your approval for an adoption of the proposed strategic plan. And then step 5 will be to implement the action plan, to carry out the action plan, and then following the commission's approval in that plan. And then finally, step 5 is the continued monitoring, evaluation, and revisit the objectives and action plan. This is a living document. So as we review things, as we move forward in ensuring we meet the goals, there are objectives that may change. There are new objectives that may come up that we need to add to the plan. And so this is a living document, so we'll do that. And so to monitor and evaluate, we will have periodic progress reports, and we will establish the time frame in which we'll provide those progress reports. So you'll know where we stand in our progress. So in these steps, hit the next slide. As you can see, we've completed step 1. We identified the key areas. We also, in step 2, we've completed that. We established the areas as a group, as a body through those several sessions that we've had. And then we also have completed step 3. We've developed goals and objectives. That's what's before you today. And so step 4 is where we are. We're in progress. That is the purpose of this meeting, to review what we've put together and proposed. And we have developed an action plan. And so what we're seeking is your feedback and questions today, and as to whether this is meeting your expectations. And so in step 5, we'll move that after we have approval, we'll then move towards implementing the action plan. So let's talk about the strategic priorities plan and the objectives that are included. So objective 1, build a community that shows our unique character while supporting small businesses, affordable housing, and the development of high priority properties. Objective 2, which is related to infrastructure and public assets. This objective will allow us to continue to invest in and improve upon street restructuring, water and electric utility services, park facilities, and our public assets. Objective 3 relates to environmental sustainability, where we will foster the balance between economic growth and environmental care by adjusting building codes and setting goals for carbon neutrality and conserving resources. And finally, objective 4, quality of life. We will ensure safety, housing, and mental health support, and community events and programs are inclusive for all residents, business owners, visitors, and city employees. And as you can see in this slide, that all these objectives are interrelated. And so some of the action items that you will see on our list, they can fall under any one of those categories. But so it is a multifaceted impact on what we're doing in meeting these objectives. Next slide. So let's dive deeper into each objective. I'm going to put on the screen so I can see better. So objective 1, community and economic development, which we're building a community that shows unique character. Trying to get it here. So you see we have 6 goals to meet that objective. The first one relates to finalizing the design concept for the pool. The second one, in which we're in progress, and we'll be talking more about that in August. B, reopen the Gulfstream Hotel. We have achieved that by finalizing and approving the letter of intent agreement. And then C, we're encouraging and supporting new and existing businesses. And we're doing that by creating the Business Advisory Board, and we have done that. D is create more affordable housing opportunities, and much have gone into that by adopting the number of LDRs that you have approved. E, develop a mobility plan. We are in progress in doing that, so that's underway as well. And finally, F, conduct a community redevelopment agency, the CRA feasibility study, to consider modifying district boundaries prior to the sunset date. Next slide. Objective 2, infrastructure and public assets. So to meet this goal, to meet this objective, our goals are to continue to balance energy, resources, and costs to improve reliability and minimize outages. So that's always in progress. There's always continued improvement in that area, and that's being done through our SHRIP 2 program. B, implement the renovations to the water treatment plant, the replacement of water distribution mains, and the construction of raw water wells, and so forth. And then also research the possibilities for the construction of a new city hall. That's underway as well. D, focus on street resurfacing priorities, ADA requirements for sidewalks and shared use paths. So all those are being acted upon as we have obtained TPA approval to work on some of our ADA improvements for the sidewalks. Encourage continuous improvements of our public assets, including the library maintenance, city hall annex restoration, park playground maintenance, golf course, clubhouse renovations, and creation of new seawalls. So most of those items are in progress. We're working on or try to find funding for those improvements. Next slide. Objective 3, environmental sustainability, where we're fostering the balance between economic growth and environmental care. And so we have 5 goals there. Established electric utility goal regarding carbon neutrality or carbon sink by exploring the use of solar energy and ways to reduce carbon emissions. Review, adjust, and clarify building codes, land development regulations, and zoning laws to encourage improvements in our energy efficiency in buildings. C, minimize excessive or poor use of artificial lighting in new and old construction to not disturb natural wildlife habitat and increase carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. C, protect human impact on the environment by creating ordinances on drone flight area limitations and growing more tree canopies throughout the city, achieving tree city designation, and researching related grant funds. And so we talked a little bit about that at our last meeting about the tree city and tree shade efforts, and we're working towards those goals. And we also address some of the issues regarding the drones. We pass ordinances to address that. And D, partner with TPA to create bus shelters throughout the city to meet the needs of one of the highest ridership areas in Palm Beach County for PalmTrans services. And we are one of the highest ridership areas for PalmTrans. So as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, that we have received information that we've been awarded funding to provide canopy shelters for our bus stops. 15.
15.
Yes, 15.
Great.
And the last objective, number 4, quality of life. So we have 5 goals to meet that objective: create initiatives and programs to enrich community partnerships. And so in that, we will work with code enforcement to have community engagement programs. And we're working on one now to bring forth an outline and proposal regarding a beautification program to bring community pride and make our community more safe and attractive. We also working on homelessness support, behavioral health initiatives, crisis and intervention teams. We're working with our with PBSO in partnering with them as they are on the front lines addressing these issues daily. So we try to support them in caring for our community. And intergovernmental partnerships and neighboring agencies. We're working all the time with the county, state legislatures, and our other community partners to bring services and enhance services for our community to make sure that our residents are aware of the different programs and opportunities for improving their life and their livelihood. And then the next goal is to maintain Pinecrest Cemetery and increase the level of care, service, and appearance by partnering with the Historical Society for cleaning of historic tombstones, replacing fencing gates for security, and maintain landscape improvements. And so those items are in progress as well, and you'll be hearing more about that. C, develop a partnership with public safety to encourage the use of body cameras and address noise compliance adherence with code enforcement support. And as you know, we've obtained the body cameras, so that's in the works now, working with the public safety. And then we also have adopted the noise ordinance, and you heard the report from Captain Bear that is being implemented. And D, enhance communications and services by improving the city's website so it is more appealing, informative, intuitive, and user-friendly, allowing for overall better customer service experience. And so we are working, and we will be rolling out a new website design, and a wonderful Miss Bennett is heading that up. And so you'll hear more about that in the near future. And then C, continually improve workplace culture through employee personal development, work schedules, wellness programs, and employee appreciation events. And we are always finding ways to show that we appreciate our staff and teams. We also are continuing professional development programs to certainly give our employees resources so that they can be successful in what they do and to improve the efficiencies in the city. So those are the 4 objectives. So just to summarize, because I've done a lot of talking, and so I'm very interested in hearing from you and your feedback and questions regarding the proposed plan. But just to recap, the goal of this strategic plan, priority plan, is to capture the commission's objectives, suggested programs and projects and initiatives, to establish accountability of those action plans related to meeting your goals, and then also position the city to achieve its long-term vision. And lastly, maintain a more livable, a sustainable, safe community for all to enjoy. Next slide. And so with that, the next steps. Following this meeting, the next steps would be to approve the plan. And then the team will implement the plan by executing the action items. And then from there, we will provide periodic reporting, monitoring, and revisiting the objectives. Next slide. So this is the time for your feedback and questions.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much. And thank you for the work that everyone has put into this report. Well, I saw Mr. McBoy and Mr. Diaz is like going first. We'll go that way.
first like to go on with Commissioner Stokes.
I apologize.
Are we gonna go page by page or?
I don't know. Let's
do you
talk
think?
about that.
I
I,
was,
I-
I was hoping to go objective by objective. So of the 4 objectives, if we could all talk about the first
First.
objective and then move on to the
Perfect.
next
That's what I
one.
was thinking.
Yeah.
Good. We're all on the same
all right,
page.
so Ms. Stokes to begin.
Yes. I do like a lot of so we have the objectives and then what are they called underneath? The goals. Okay. Just want to get that straight. The goals to meet yes. So, in my job, they're key results or something, but, so I like a lot of what's here, but I feel like for this first one, something that I feel like was missing right now is us really coming together as a body and figuring out like our brand as a city. And like, so that we said, the objective is to build a community that shows our unique character. But none of the goals like address kind of defining what that means. So that could mean anything to any number of people. So I know, I'd love to see something in here more about the fact that we were traditionally considered a community of the arts, with a lot of diversity and celebrating that.
Mhm.
That we been a place where everybody's always felt safe to live regardless of their
Mhm.
anything.
So inclusive.
Very inclusive. So, and then just even, just when I see the word like vision and our character, I don't know that we have a very easily identify. If you asked people in the community what is
Mhm.
mission's vision, and it might tie into economic development. Well, this is economic development, but it might tie into the other, under environmental sustainability, we said we were going to review, adjust, and clarify building codes and the land development regulations. But this commission hasn't looked at our future land use map, and we haven't, as a body, looked and said, okay, what are we building towards in the
Mhm,
future?
mhm.
So it would just be great for us to have an objective that allows us to get on the same page of our vision, our actual vision.
Okay, we can add that.
And then the other thing that for C, with encouraging and supporting new existing small businesses, I know when we were doing the downtown study, we heard a lot about taking this a step farther. So we'll have the advisory board, which is like one step, but we've heard a lot about incubators or creating spaces. Like what else can we do to create an environment and maybe partner with the CRA or with the downtown project to encourage those, to make it easier
Mhm, mhm.
to start a small business and less risky. So those were just a couple of my thoughts on the first one so
Okay,
far.
that's good thoughts. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Commissioner Boyd, I think you're next.
Thank you. We have to grumble because Commissioner Stokes stole some of my thunder, but mine's a little bit different, but it does overlap a fair amount. Seemed to me that one of the things I felt, well, first of all, let me say that I like a lot of what we've got here. I very much like the idea of vision, goals, objectives, and then, okay, what are the steps we're going to take to do that, and some sort of accountability of how are we doing achieving. I think that's very sensible. For me, kind of what felt missing a little bit was a front end part of it of vision, something that any resident in the city could read and not have to weed through kind of government or the way we talk internally in government, but just where are we going? What do we want to be as a city?
Is that a
And
mission statement?
somewhat of a
Mhm.
visioning statement. It might be a little bit more expansive than just a one sentence kind of thing, but I think another way to think about it is if one wants to think economic terms, I think we should think more broadly, but economic provides a guidepost a little bit. Competitive advantage. Cities compete with each other, and cities in South Florida certainly compete with each other. All the advice I've ever seen says you will compete best if you compete on your strengths. Don't try to be something that somebody else is ahead of you.
Mhm, mhm.
So a vision that, and I think this is where I felt some overlap with what Commissioner Stokes was saying. And I'm thinking back somewhat to the conversations when the tourism
folks, county's tourism folks were here recently. They were quite clear, at least I understood, that our historic aspect is part of our competitive advantage. And we should include that in some of our vision, that we see this as something that sets us apart from other places. We were laid out early on. We were laid out differently. We've been here. This is one of the earliest places to get settled in South Florida. And we want to embrace that. And here's the things that we're going to do to make sure that we do. Community and economic development, I think kind of a very central theme to this community is we had a city commission that was here for about 10 years that was very focused on economic development. We're poor, we need more money to provide more services. And I think probably pretty much everybody in the community would agree with that. The question is, what are we willing as a community to do or not do to get forward that? And that's where it ties to some of this vision. We could say, well, you know what, everybody says that the more you develop, build more buildings, build new stuff, that gives you economic development. And I think a lot of people in this community would say, well, yeah, I like economic development, but I don't like it that much. I want to do it some other more creative way. So I think the vision needs to be there. Where do we see ourselves? What do we see ourselves looking like in 5 years, 25 years? What do we want to do? And what are the things that we will take to help ensure that that vision happens? Because we're all under a lot of development pressure, as I've said infinite number of times here. If we don't plan, we won't get there. So yes, I agree with a review of our codes, clarifying our vision, which won't be easy because we all have slightly different versions of what we see, but
Yeah,
Remember, it was like 4 sentences. We
Yeah.
all agreed on which.
Yeah. and I'm looking at the language. I'm not disagreeing with you, the community and economic development. I mean, Bill, I think we could add some language to that particular just paragraph, which is while bearing in mind the historical artistic tradition of the.
and I wouldn't say build a community that shows our unique character. It's not just that we want to show it, it's that we want to have it and make it and preserve
Embrace
it and
it.
enhance it.
Yeah,
Embrace
I
it.
think we could use at least a little bit of it's already in the objective, and we can fill that out, but I think it would be nice to have an actual goal. So that's
Yeah.
our objective, but what are we going to do to try to meet that
I think
objective?
that's a-
Do you guys
Right.
remember
Pretty easy.
talking when we did the second workshop, we came
Yeah.
up with like 4 sentences
Yes,
and
we
we all
Yeah.
agreed on this was our vision statement.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's good to know. I
Seem to
wasn't
be the
aware
only
of that.
senile one here.
It was like 3 or 4 sentences and we crafted it for like an hour and a half on one of our workshops.
Yeah, we did.
And we said, that's it, that we all agreed on a vision.
Well, I'll pull that out. I
Yeah.
was unaware of that.
Jessica, I think that was the
Right.
last one that
They were
Jessica
writing
did.
stuff down.
She
Yeah,
was on the
yep,
back
yep.
wall.
Yeah,
And I would encourage in that frame, I can't remember, I apologize, I don't remember very much about that for whatever reason. I would encourage that I think we share and the community shares quite a bit of an interest in, although we're small, or we're not wealthy, in being kind of scrappy and leaders, whether it's in social areas or environmental areas. And we've shown that recently. We've had legislation we've passed that other communities, including larger ones, have adopted.
Mhm.
That's cool.
So
One-
add some language about preserving historic artistic
Yeah.
nature.
It's very scientific. It's some of the, less science.
The arcane sciences.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
Good feedback. Thank you.
Yep, no, that's fine. I guess Mr. Diaz was next.
Yeah. So sometimes it's tough, like sticking to community and economic development, because there is a lot of overlap with the others. And I think that's kind of our strength is that, to steal the word scrappy, we're effective, I suppose I would rather use, and more efficient with what we have.
Mhm.
And I think that is a big selling point. And there's been a lot of, let's say, not visual improvements that have been made, especially by Carmen and staffing and whatnot. It's a little bit ahead, but I do appreciate the line that includes our city employees, the kind of single them out because they're such a crucial part in accomplishing a lot of these goals. And strategic plans can be, it's exactly what it is. It's a plan. It sets goalposts. and expectations and measuring. And I don't look at the goals necessarily. I feel like that's somewhat the flexible part because a lot of these were already either completed or they're mostly complete,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Like Gulfstream, like, the ball's in their court and hopefully, we're ready to help if needed. So many things are on the way. Something that could be mentioned is probably our housing study, because between the mobility plan and looking at broadening the CRA, something that is kind of missing, and it's mostly because I don't know what the specific answer is. So this is I think hopefully a good conversation on all of these issues is what's on the other side, what's that gonna translate to. And we have a huge opportunity, like community and economic development, and I'm looking at it as there's kind of in this category there's kind of two sides to it. And one of them, and I think Vice Mayor, you kind of hinted at it, is the let's call it, I think you said branding, let's call it the PR side, the public outreach, and how are people going to know what we're doing and whatnot. And I think that is a critical thing that really will cover all of these four objectives, but especially in community development, so that we can be more transparent, more open on what we're doing and the reasons behind it, is to kind of have a really nice, maybe in-house PR system, if you will, that's going to effectively get, even things that we do. We talk about, I've brought it up, I think, a couple of times, where we'll often make what I think is a really important policy decision. And it might be something that flies under the radar for most people. It's usually like electric utility or something. And we should be in all the media's faces and be like, here's our press release. We're doing this because we're proud and we're scrappy. I'd prefer to use the word innovative. But
Trying to get
we need to just get that stuff out there. And then on the other side of that is for us and for staff especially, we have a mobility plan. We're looking at broadening the CRA district. We have a housing plan. So what is it that we're thinking? And the other category is looking at our LDRs. I think we also should be more intentional and more thoughtfully planning to look at our comp plan and adjust, because things are happening very quickly with Tallahassee, with home rule, and how we can manage our own growth. And so we really need to be conscious of, we're going to take this well-researched, informed decisions, but we're also going to be just like the strategic plan is going to be doing on itself, monitoring those changes throughout the years and making sure that we're on target and accomplishing the goals that we are, to make it easier for ourselves. Because I can point out, using the example of our policy being copied and pasted by other municipalities, you look at Live Local and what that's doing for land use law. And I see other communities, I won't name names, I see other communities mostly because it's, my friends that are helping consult them on the land use stuff. And there's a lot of like, we should have done this years ago. Let's like hurry up and get these things in before July 1st. And we quite frankly didn't really have to do a lot of that. And we should make sure that we're on top of that and we set that out and write it out so that people are well aware that we're innovative in that way. So maybe for this category, with the 3 studies, especially, something, that kind of is going to bring it together. And I don't know exactly what that is, but, there's going to be an end game. There's going to be not just piece by piece policy change, but it's going to be a lot more informed, a lot more database, and it's going to be thoughtful and planning for the future to protect ourselves. And I think it's really important the goals are really good, but I do look at them as they're broad. I think, you have to look hand in hand with the action items, because that really paints the picture. And, things overlap like for community economic development, it's in italics because we're not quite there yet, like the golf course.
Mhm, mhm.
And I've talked about in the past, and we were working on it pretty hard, is there's a lot of overlap with environment as well. We can improve that golf course to make it something really special and really significant that's also going to help the lagoon. But it's also, that is going to be the incentive for people to come and use our golf course over down the road, PGAs. And, so there's a lot in here, and I know it takes a lot of effort to get this together, and it is a living, breathing document, but you really have to look at both in conjunction. I have so much more to say, especially on infrastructure and whatnot, but we'll wait for those.
And you're right. You look at it as a document with layers.
Right.
You have your objectives, the categories in which you want to address in the city, and you have those goals based on those objectives, and then you have the action items. And so when you dig deeper into it, you'll see actually what's happening in the action items, which accomplishes those goals.
Ms. Malinga.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mrs. Davis, I want to say thank you for getting this to us last week. When I went through it, I was very happy, especially when we went to budget and you tied a lot of the items in budget back to this already.
That's right.
I don't know if the public was aware of that, but it was really nice to see the connection between what the goals are, the objectives are, and here's what we're spending to get there. And yes, as the mayor said, I've been pushing for this because I am somebody who's a nerd who does business plans, and it is a living, breathing document because our goals will change. As we achieve things, goals will change. My only concern when I kept rereading it is the actual community and economic development, build a community. We already have a community, so I don't really love the word build a community. And I would like to say that embraces versus that shows our unique character. Because, Lake Worth Beach is unique and we do embrace all of our culture and all of our diversity.
And I think that's where the language about historic.
Right. And then for B, instead of reopen the Gulf Stream, I would say support the reopening of the
Right.
historical Gulf Stream.
Right.
So it doesn't send a message that we are the ones financially or physically responsible for reopening it.
Mhm, mhm.
And D, I would love to see something about the CRA in that language, because the CRA has brought in millions of dollars in housing. And for the create more affordable housing opportunity, we need to tie in the CRA and the work that they're doing there. Somehow into that language.
Okay.
But for you to take everything from the previous workshops that we've done and pretty much hone it down, you and staff into this document,
Mhm.
thank you.
Mhm.
Kudos to you all.
Yeah.
I don't think that we're very far from an approval of, yep, this is it, let's roll. And then, every year coming back and saying, okay, what have we knocked out? What is next on the to-do list, right?
Right.
So I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for you and staff, because this makes it easier when we have something in front of us. We go, okay, here's the request. Does it fit with our strategic plan?
Right.
No. So this has got to be put over here because it's not part of our strategic plan right now. It stops all of those emergencies and urgencies that want to be created and the glitter balls to being put on a shelf and stay focused on moving the city forward.
Yeah.
Stay focused on what the community wants, not what the newest trend is, or not what's happening in Tallahassee and how do we combat that. It's really just, to me, the strategic plan is going to be our instruction for the rules that we make up here and how we do things for the city.
Mhm.
So again, thank you. I don't think that we're far from it. I think we just need to work on cleaning up some language.
That's good.
Mr. Diaz.
Yeah, I really like that comment. We're not building a community, the community is here, because that really touches on very classic land use and planning theory, which is, this isn't this isn't a former farm that we're just going to build something from scratch.
Right.
Something exists here. And Vice Mayor, I think, put it really well too, in terms of play your strengths. Don't it's fun to be high level and really have distance goals, but also we have things that we know that works. And it is our diversity, it is our our Central American community, which has been here for forever, seems like, and such a major part. And generally when you plan a community or you plan to redevelop a community, you want to highlight that. You want to be like, this is what's here, and we're going to carry that spirit on with better infrastructure, better buildings and whatnot. But that's the character and the flavor that we're known for, and we should be proud of it. I mean, yeah, we were talking about it earlier in terms of, I obviously love food, and we have a lot of great restaurants in here, and you can literally like eat around the world in our town, and that's not super common in a lot of places. And it's like things like that, business wise, that we really need to highlight and protect.
Yeah, so maybe drawing attention to the things that we have. One of the things I've noticed in the past couple of years is that the people that I meet that are moving in here are, this used to be, nearly dead, newlywed. We're having families with children move in. I'm getting, when I talk to people out in the public about the pool, yeah, I would love to have the place to go with my friends to bring our kids to visit at the pool. So I think, so we go from, that's how diverse we are. We are diverse from all aspects of everything. So the historic aspect, the artistic aspect, you play with
Got it.
that language. Mr. McVoy, something else?
Yeah, I looked up scrappy and it says disorganized, untidy or incomplete. Well, no wonder there was some.
No wonder we are no longer
That's not what
scrappy.
I'm in favor. I thought of. scrappy
Determined.
as-
How about
No,
determined?
Not
How
that different anyhow.
about
It's
determined?
innovative.
Innovate.
Innovative and, doing a lot with it, resourceful.
There we go.
More the direction I was thinking, but
Okay.
I think thinking about the community and economic development and especially reviewing our, I call it the whole LDR zoning, all of that stuff together to make sure that it is as much as possible consistent with vision. And here's the example that comes to mind to me. We talk a lot up here about being very much in favor of diversity and embracing that. And I think everybody here is quite serious about it. And I think almost all of the community is too. However, as I look along what's happening and walk between where we are now and the circle, so the western part of Lake and Lucerne, I see a lot of diversity. I see a lot of different small businesses, different cultures, different backgrounds. But I also see a lot of development happening that I can predict pretty easily. It's going to bump up rents on some of those existing business places. We don't have in place that I know of within the city a list of what are the businesses that are already there, because there's a string of them, and what is their economic impact. I think if we were looking at that a bit more, we would recognize, look, we have an issue of how do we do some more development, building some interesting housing, but not force out a big chunk of the business diversity that we already have there, that we tend to think from Dixie going east, and that's our business part. Well, it is, and there are plenty of business there, and they're certainly important, but there's a lot going west, and there's a lot going up and down Dixie Highway. I think, and some of them are more endangered, some of them need more help as far as incubator kind of ideas, as Commissioner Diaz suggested. Small business ones. I like that we're forming a small business board. I am concerned that it will not be easy to make sure that we bring in people from west of Dixie and make sure that they have a voice, that the concerns that they experience are in fact taken into account. So economic development, we're all for it, but I think if we want to enhance our competitive advantage, we have to be quite imaginative of how to recognize what we already have and how to enhance some of that and not get in the way of it. And I revise my support for Scrappy on further education.
Thank you. Okay, let's go to number 2. And obviously, all of us will have the opportunity to meet individually with Ms. Davis. Oh, number 2.
Okay. Infrastructure and public assets.
Ms. Malika.
The
Yeah.
only thing I'd like to see is the infrastructure and public assets in green. It says upon street resurfacing water, add in sewer and electric utilities.
Yes.
Mhm.
And then letter E. Include the cemetery, please, because
Absolutely.
that is an asset and a service as well.
Both of them,
That we need to focus on.
both of them.
Mhm. Got it.
Commissioner Diaz.
Yeah, the sewer and stormwater is so critical. This morning at TPA, we discussed going through our tip programs, which is transportation improvement. So one of the things I came up was basically municipalities dealing with DOT roads, and resurfacing is obviously a main focus of theirs now, priority. And the thing that I was able to bring up is we're looking at, this year is a good year to talk about it because of it being El Nino and all the extra rain we're getting, and things like our stormwater management is really being tested everywhere in Florida, not just us, not a unique problem. So when you have that rare opportunity of resurfacing, when you open up that road and you pull off, the asphalt or the pavement, whatever's on top, that comes once every, number of decades. So when you have that opportunity, and as we plan for that, I think what could be reflected here is we need to be more intentional, and this overlaps with environmental, obviously, more intentional on resilience and planning for those changes, because the thing about DOT is, it takes 7 years for you to get through a project. And if by the third year you all of a sudden ask, hey, we need to do our stormwater management, you're going to get a really hard no, because you have to ask for that at the beginning of the process. So, we just have to be very conscious and thoughtful that when these opportunities arise, we're going to think about it all. It's more than, in other words, it's more than just resurfacing, fixing potholes. It's also taking the opportunity to make sure that everything underneath is going to last for decades to come. And, other than that, I use this opportunity to bring up something that I've been talking with Carmen quite a bit. It's not on the list of the action items yet. And this is gonna, I'll just put it out there. I think it's in terms of infrastructure and supporting a lot of these infrastructures. I mean, you see the costs of a lot of these things. I think it's time for us to seriously start talking about charging for parking in our downtown. It's something we've talked about a lot. I know there's going to be pushback, but there's a lot of research, a lot of writing out there that points it out. And, one of the best resources is a paper that's called the High Cost of Free Parking. And it's basically laying out what you're doing to yourself by not charging for parking. And I don't like to generally use the argument that we're the only ones. We're not the only ones. Palm Beach has free parking. I know they're about to get rid of it. And that's not the reason to do that. The reason to do it is because we need revenue. We need to cover some of these projects. You brought up doing like the umbrellas and fun things like that. And quite frankly, our budget is too razor thin. We sell ourselves short, and we really need to take a hard look to bring that in. Because when I do, my usual strategic plans every 5 years for the nonprofits, we also look at what are the low hanging fruits. What can we do in the first year? What can we do in the second year? I'm not suggesting we do that for this, because that's a lot for a municipality to do. But I do think parking is something we can do in a year. We kind of have a head start. We do have a WGI study that was done a little while ago. It might need to be updated. And, we obviously have to look at other things like residential permits. How far do we want to go? Enforcement, of course, we'll have to hire people. We have a new parking director who's really great. And I just think now is the time. Dare I remind us that costs have gone up significantly. How much did our insurance go up? 45%, something like that. So
45%.
Or property liability.
for property liability insurance, the costs are going up for everyone. That includes us. And I think the timing is right. Other things that are coming, pretty soon we'll be discussing bringing Circuit to Lake Worth, which I've had some meetings on. We have our parking garage next to Bohemian, which is admittedly being underutilized. And why would people use it, right? We have free parking elsewhere, but once there's connectivity, once we have revenue coming in for that, I think there's going to be a lot of improvement. And then when you look at the planning theory behind it all, it's not just about also funding our things, it's also helping our downtown district, because you need that rotation. If somebody comes to work and they're going to park right in front of their job for 10 hours, because they don't have to pay anything. It's just easy and convenient because you're there at 8 in the morning or whatever. Think about how many people are going to rotate through there who are going to park there, walk around, spend money in our downtown. So yeah, it's long overdue on infrastructure.
A bold move, Mr. Diaz.
I'll take it. I'll take the beating, whatever.
Young. Okay, thank you. Mr. McFoy, go ahead.
And we're on infrastructure and public assets. Okay. I have a couple comments on different parts of it. On the energy resources, I think we want to be a little bit more specific on that we really want to get to a true net zero in our carbon relations. We want to improve our energy resilience. We know that we're going to have more storms, more intense storms is pretty well accepted at this point. So things like microgrids, diverse sources of power, interconnections, that as we work on our infrastructure, that we are preparing ourselves. And there's a lot of expertise at the national level available to us to help do that. On B, stormwater, as I mentioned at a recent meeting, being out during a storm and being out for, I'd have to go back and look at the time, but less than an hour, we drained off the water. This was over by F Street kind of area, a little bit north of Lucerne and on Lucerne. But we went from water up to my knees. I was standing in it, to it all being pretty much all gone within a few hours. But that period of it being up to the knees meant it was coming into various people's houses. Not good. And that's where, looking ahead on the climate change, one of the things is rainfall intensity, not just the amount going up, but how fast it gets dumped. That was the problem in Fort Lauderdale. So as we think about stormwater, and it's probably, we're probably not going to be able to fix it through stormwater. I don't think we're going to dig up all our sewers and make them bigger. It's not possible. I don't think we're going to put in pumps very many places. So it means that we have to think about it in terms of finish elevations on all new construction. But let's think about it. On C, something that I've felt was a need in our community for a long time is we have a wonderful example of it with Compass as a community center, a place that provides a safe place, provides a place for health resources, provides a number of things, exchange of ideas. It is fairly targeted to a particular community. We need more of that. We particularly need it for the Haitian community and probably need it to some extent for the Guatemalan Mayan community. And maybe there are other communities that need a community gathering place that exchanges information, helps with education, cross-cultural and all that stuff. On E, I've had a lot of communications with people. I've taken pictures, most recently in Madison, Wisconsin at the Children's Museum. I think we need more on imaginative, creative approaches to playground things under E, and living shorelines. Seawalls are fine, but living shorelines are better. And I'll defer to Commissioner Diaz on that one. He helps maintain them. And we should, as a little side note on that one, we should codify somewhere that we are not, as a city, in favor of cutting mangroves, that we are in favor of growing them. I know that it's been an issue that sometimes there's pressure to cut them. It's a problem with state law, so don't do it, but
Absolutely.
we should codify that. There
There's
is
that
that.
darn state law again. Okay, thank you very much. One of the things about being, I generally go as last. So a lot of things that I thought have been seen. I've gotten a lot of complaints, not complaints, but reports about the storm drains, South Palmway, Lakeside. I mean, it's and the North End as well. So, I don't know what we can do about it, but it is something that I'm hearing, I think 15th Avenue South, 16th Avenue South are really a problem. The folks are very concerned because it is getting into their yards and their houses. So I don't know what we can do, but I'm glad that someone brought up the storm sewers as well. And when we say street resurfacing, that would mean our city streets as well, not, because we all know, I mean, there's some streets around here that we all know that there's some streets that really need some help and streets that are fairly heavily used by people, like public people downtown in South Lakeside, so this are just terrible. But let's keep up with trying to, I'm not saying anything you're not thinking about, but to state the obvious, we still need work on our streets. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Jamie says, bring your checkbook.
bring your checkbook. Let's have a bake sale. Yeah, okay, Mr. Diaz.
Oh, I was just going to say quickly regarding 18th South, there was a bit of a snafu, and that's such a great example, that project, that pump station, bit of a snafu with the responses to the RFP. But once that, hopefully we have an update for that soon, but that's a great example. It's not just infrastructure. It's not just like something that we got to maintain as if it's a part in a car. It's literally environmental shoreline resilience. And it's exactly the kind of thing that, we need to be thoughtful of as we carry out all along the lagoon.
Okay. Yep. All right. So moving on, the next one would be environmental sustainability. Who's up? Oh, is that Ms. Malega?
I'm gonna go quickly,
Okay.
because I know that if he goes first,
No,
we're all gonna sit here forever.
Well, no.
go quick.
Environmental. Okay, the only thing on the top in the purple, foster the balance between economic growth and environmental care.
Mhm.
I would like to see environmental care over economic growth.
Put it first.
Yes,
Okay.
not over like layered, but put it first.
Correct.
On D, protect human impact on the environment. I think that protect environment from negative human impact is a stronger statement.
Protect from negative human, yeah.
Protect environment from negative human impact. Or just, we got to recraft that a little bit,
Yeah.
that language. C, how do we change minimize excessive or poor use to, I like to put things in positive. So how do we say encouraging proper lighting? Like, I would like all of these bullets to be something
More
positive, not,
positive, yeah.
not coming from a negative,
Yeah.
but
Mhm.
flip it, right?
International dark sky standards.
Everybody knows that, Mr.
Well,
Science, just
It'll
encouraging proper lighting for the environment, protecting what he just said in the turtles and
Bearing
environment,
in
whatever.
mind
But just if we can
I
take
know
some
who
of
to
these,
consult with.
yeah, take some of these negatives and that, instead of saying don't or stop or prohibit, encourage, embrace, enhance are the words that I think that we should be using, because we're a positive city. I mean,
Yes.
that's what we want. We want to exude the positivity. That's it. I'm out.
Got it. Thank you.
I'm gonna go with everybody first.
Huh? You're gonna what?
I'm just wondering how long this is gonna be.
Who wants to go first is what she said.
I don't want to go first, but I have two people, I have a line, there's a queue,
I'll zip through them.
zip through them, the
Okay.
pressure of your colleagues.
Let me get my pen ready.
I think it's important here also to give some context. I liked a lot what Commissioner Malega said of, let's state it in a positive way. I think that's fairly compatible with what I said at some meeting recently. I don't know, I guess the commission meeting or whatever we had 2 days ago. Yeah, my birthday, that's the one.
Yeah.
Positive. That as much as possible as that we be explicit about our goals. Why do we care about ground cover? We care about ground cover in part for heat island effects, cools the place off, part to keep those storm drains working. Keep sand from getting in. You need something because otherwise sand will just go right down the drain. So the context in this one is a big part of it is climate variability. We know that things are going to get more variable, meaning you get more extremes. The stuff that came up, I think, at the last meeting of what hydrologists call a 500-year storm means something that ought to have a return frequency of about 1 in 500 years, which means in my next term, I probably won't see it. What people are finding is, geez, we just had 3 500-year storms in the last year. We're breaking temperature records all over the world. but it's not just temperature, it's rainfall intensity. It's one that needs to be part of why we are interested in environmental sustainability. Carbon sink is SINK, just a little one. I think on B, I'm all for putting some attention. I've been very negligent about it. Building codes is an important place to have an influence on our environmental footprint. And I think we are not bad on it, but I think we could focus on it a little bit more, again, in the context of our doing our part on decarbonization. The artificial lighting, I agree, make it a little clearer. We don't disrupt much natural wildlife habitat because we haven't got much here. That's not, that one does, let's noodle around with the language on that one. On D, it's like Scrappy.
He says noodle a lot.
Yeah.
You
I like
pick
that.
that one.
I noodle.
I'll come up with the definition for noodle.
I'm writing my note, may need to noodle.
On the drone flights, that does not refer to McVoy droning on. It refers to the drones. I just would like to point out, I was at the July 4th and there was at least one drone flying around. Don't know whether it was our city's or somebody else's, but it was there. So,
Considering fireworks are happening at the park that night, maybe that one day, yeah.
yeah, whatever it is, we're not supposed to be doing it. I would, you know, the drone environment, that's very specific, protect the American oyster catchers. I wouldn't elevate that to a single item. The big one on that one is tree canopy.
Mhm.
What are we going to do in the way of real commitment to tree canopy? How are we going to get there? Quantitative ones to plant more trees, maintenance of trees, don't let people hat rack them,
Mhm.
whatever. The tree city designation, that's very minor. That's not, it's what are
Oh,
we
I
actually
understand.
doing to get trees? The good part is they grow like gangbusters in our climate.
Mhm.
So if you do something, you'll get some benefits soon. And transportation under environmental sustainability, another big place that we have a footprint is how do you get around?
Mhm.
So make it a real focus that it is safe enough for people to feel safe to get out on a bicycle and get around. Some of us on the commission bike anyhow because we're, I don't know, we're impervious to getting run over by cars or we don't want to think about it and we do it. But a lot of people do not feel safe to do that here, so it doesn't become a practical solution. It's a needed priority. It is striking to me that cities, a number of cities in Latin America, which is not necessarily known for being out on the leading edge of environmental thinking, are very active in making alternative transportation, particularly bicycles, in a lot of the big cities, making that possible, welcoming, safe, and I'd say that needs to be a priority on here. How'd I do?
Not bad.
I
Not
I
bad.
thought it was really good.
So, yeah, I wasn't timing that time. Who wants to go first? I forget who was first.
Diaz is first. I only have one thing.
Okay, why don't you have one thing first? Then
I think Vice Mayor touched on a little bit, but I would love to see something in here too about the education component. I know in the next page, we'll talk about communication as well. But I think that is an area as a city we've struggled with, is getting factual information out there. And we can see how easy it is for little things to flare up, cause hysteria, misinformation, rumors to spread. And I think for me, it's a priority that we as a city do not put out political statements, but actual information about why we're doing some of the things that we're doing, but why I don't want to have to code enforce people into helping the environment. That's never been a goal of this commission. We had a workshop on code enforcement a year ago. And back then we talked about educate, because there's a lot of people that if they knew better practices or things would do it on their own. So, and it's going to take outreach. It's going to take something more than what we currently have available to us. So that's my biggest thing here with all this, is trying to get the communication education going.
So
No,
If they can-
Right.
Along those lines, I don't know how many of us got the email from Gail Silverblatt today. There was, and I mean, and it really was in line with what I think the conversations about what the tree landscape board is, they had a beautiful pamphlet about these are the trees you should plant. I mean, it's educational. So, some along those lines, I agree that they should, education should.
I feel like we've been working on something for a very long time now. We've been working on a brochure. We've been working
The
on.
word I'm using these days is glacial movement.
Yes, so we gotta get that up and running and get it out into the hands of.
Right. And
The
this
community.
effort is to move that needle.
Okay, again, any other thing, I'm not gonna add too much because I'll meet with Ms. Davis too if I have some stuff, but it's essentially been covered.
I jumped.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah.
No problem. Clearly have a lot to say on environment, but I'll keep it short because we cover a lot here. And Commissioner Malega stepped out, but I think the positive thing is really what's needed. I think there's a lot of burnout from doom and gloom. I think that's pivotal. And I always think about it because I had a mentor, Maggie Herchala, who has since passed, but that was kind of always her thing. And that's one thing that stuck on me from her is she would always have this saying, especially when it came to Lake Okeechobee and when it turns green, where it's, don't panic, but like take the kick in the pants to start doing something about it.
Right.
And I think we've been pretty good at that because as Vice Mayor McVoy pointed out, our LDRs especially are pretty pro environment. I think there's definitely room for environment, but compared to a lot of communities out there, LDRs and especially comp plans I've seen, I think we're years ahead of people on that regard, which is good. But there's always room for improvement. And more specifically, there's always room to protect ourselves from our home rule being attacked and trying to be thoughtful, and it's like a game of chess, right? And I'm sure Mr. Waters knows all about that. In terms of the TPA one, it's great seeing here, and I was thinking about this page this morning when I was waiting for the bus to go to my TPA meeting, and I got rained on with no shelter, and I was like, man, these 15 shelters cannot get here soon enough.
The rain and the sun.
In the meantime,
And no,
umbrella.
Yeah,
you could bring an umbrella. You could.
Yeah, but
It is
it's
Florida.
right. And when you're dressed, as you're supposed to be dressed for these
Just to-
meetings, it's not the most comfortable. And this is a conversation that we have a lot in TPA and in the environmental world and I hear this even from, people associated with the TPA and environmental world where they're like, yeah, the bus is great, except I'm not going to take it because it's not good enough. And there are a lot of people, as McVoy pointed out, we ride our bikes, we take transit as a choice. It's a conscious choice. It takes some planning. Sometimes it's not easy when it's raining and it's still 90 degrees and the trucks are driving by and the water from the street is getting splashed on us. But it's something that is critical, and it's critical because it's a choice for some. It's not a choice for the near majority, especially in this town. We often talk about ridership of Palm Trend and how it's so high. And I wish I could be altruistic and say people are just choosing to do, the environmentally friendly thing that they can, and it's not a choice.
Right.
People can't afford cars, people can't afford to get around, to get to work. And so, this is a major point to kind of focus on how this isn't just environment, it's also quality of life and for
TPA meetings. I didn't.
they're in downtown West Palm Beach, that Churro and Olive. There are things that I'm proud of as a Lake Worthian, and how this is a really nicely TOD frameworks, transit oriented development frameworks at town, where we have one-way streets. It's grid, they're lettered. We can walk a lot of places. Those of us that can walk a lot of places. But some things aren't so great, right? This town was planned at a time where cars weren't exactly a norm. Things like setbacks weren't exactly even on a purview of planning. Planning theory wasn't even on really, so primitive. And like one thing that we talked about this morning is the opportunity to apply for bicycle friendly designation, which would be like another kind of seal of approval of this is how we help us get more funds. But quite frankly, I'm not sure we would qualify for that, like if we applied for it. And I think we have
Good.
a lot
Out there.
to get there. It's really challenging. We have tight streets. We don't have the setbacks to get a lot of these, but everywhere we can, we should take that opportunity. And that I hope that's, I think that could be more reflective here. Maybe not just focus on bus shelters. That's one part of many, but transit, focusing on that transit oriented development and focusing on improving those services, I think are critical to environment.
Yeah.
I'll point out one of the coolest things that was presented today from Palm is their plan. They finally selected a vendor to provide electric buses and the technology that's coming there, and the scheduling to bring that online. And it obviously takes a while. They're expensive, and the technology is getting there, but the whole world is moving in this direction. So let's not be left behind.
Yeah, thank you. All right, next up is quality of life. Ensure that safety, housing, mental health support. I want to have a couple comments about this one. I'm concerned with the language of ensure that that's a commitment that I don't know that we can fulfill. Another word for that might be, I don't know, but just we can't ensure.
Or like strive,
That's what they pay me for.
strive, or we'll find a new word.
Acknowledge, or just, something, and then you go down to A, create, I don't know that we're creating initiatives for homeless support programs or behavioral mental health. There are agencies that do that. And I think, actively partnering with those agencies is a little more realistic
Mhm.
than actually creating an initiative for that sort of thing. I think we're very good at intergovernmental partnerships, between the CRA and the housing and all that stuff is great. But when I saw that, I think that wording of, create initiatives and programs could be reworded to make it a little less like, well, how are you going to ensure that? And we can't. I would add, the other cemetery and parks, our parks are,
I know there's overlap with it.
yeah. We did body cameras already. Yeah, but that my, A was my main concern about just that language.
Okay.
I think, you were next.
Yep. I was. So I did want to talk about letter A because I plan on bringing some presentations forward in the next couple of meetings about different types of programs that we can try to implement here in the city, and how we can form our program, but it relies on partnerships with other people. So I've talked to County Commissioner McBernard because they have homeless outreach teams,
Mhm.
but they don't have any dedicated to Lake Worth. They have a couple that service the whole county.
Mhm.
And so there's things that we can do to get more focused attention here and to build our own initiative, but with community partners that are already doing the work. So I'm not too worried about the language here. I'm happy to make the changes that you're suggesting, but I do want to start, we've heard from Captain Bear. The police, they're spending too much of their time answering these phone calls, and they need to be spending that as crime across the country is ticking up everywhere. They need to spend their time on violent crimes and actual crimes and not on mental health issues and things like that. So I want to see how we can use these other partnerships to support the police in handling these non-criminal issues. So that is very important to me, and I'll start bringing some presentations forward soon. So we
As
can
long as they
start talking
don't
about
cost any money.
we could have a pilot program using ARPA that could cost money. So we'll talk about that in the upcoming months.
Monday.
Yes. And then the other thing, with the improving the city's website, I'm not sure all the improvements that are being made there, but I just wanted to mention that it was, I hope that we are getting like a things to do tab up there, some way of people to be able to for us to be able to quickly show the things that you can do as the city is sponsoring, but also like other people or other organizations in the city can submit to us, like the cultural center, right? They have activities all the time,
Right.
but you know, they're like hunting all over what's in Lake Worth. So I really, really think that that should be a huge focus of, I think that was even suggested in the tourism report.
And maybe even our
Mhm.
local businesses.
Right.
So,
They can submit to us and we can have a process for helping them promote. What are all the things that are going on? Not necessarily just city stuff. The make a report button on a website, again, I really think it's hard for it. It's not, the language isn't intuitive. It's not clear when am I making a report about a pothole? Am I making a complaint about a service I'm not satisfied with? Like, you know, how do I navigate and get my answers to the questions I have? I think we wanted to improve that. I know we've talked many times about how we wish we could have somebody. I know we're getting those kiosks. I don't know if they're going to be helpful because I know they're for emergency situations, but we've talked about trying to have a number, a person, somebody you can call to help you navigate where to go in the city, get your questions answered, who to go to. And I don't know if that's something we're trying to rely on, just the website design to make that a lot easier to communicate to the public. But right now, I think if somebody has a concern, there's a lot of stuff like go directly to your city commissioner or email somebody, just go find an email on the city website and email that person. When I think they'll get a much quicker response if they're directed directly to the person that can help them.
it could be more user friendly.
Yes. So I really hope that those are coming with this enhancement. And I think that's about it for that part so far. Yep.
Who's next? Was it was Ms. Malega?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree with everything that's been said so far, especially the partnering with programs that are already here, because we have great nonprofits in the city that we already partner with, so we need to enhance that. B, can we please add IA banks to the cemeteries?
I mentioned that already, yeah.
And then I was a little disappointed that there's nothing listed, because we're talking quality of life, there's nothing about the city's overall appearance and the aesthetics. So like I mentioned to you, Carmen, the other day, we have window cling language for our main thoroughfares for empty commercial businesses, and we're not enforcing it. I'd much rather see window clings on every empty building of artwork than the brown paper that I see right now. So we
What
have
was the word you, window?
window clings, that's artwork that you order through the CRA, and there's already like 5 or 6 different pre-approved ones. So you're
Wings is like,
clings to the window. So it
Okay.
looks like artwork instead of brown paper or, you know, cellophane that's up in some of them. So I'd like to see something, because you've mentioned the beautification project. I don't see language in here, and that to
Yeah.
me is quality of life, right?
Right. So it's for clarity, these are our goals to the objectives, and through the action plan, you'll see that specific way to reach that goal. So in a more general form, you see code compliance community enhancement program. So that's the general form of a statement for many type of programs that would beautify the community
Can we
or
put something in there
enhance
for,
the appearance of the community,
can we put something in there of
more specific.
quality of life enhancing the city's beauty or something like that?
Well, we've spoken a few times, and I made a note after I finished that I wanted one more thing to say, which was we've spoken about, and you know, like promoting pride in our city.
Right, so that just, it's the city's overall appearance should be listed somewhere in here.
Okay.
And to, you know, to engage our citizens with that. And part of what you're talking about with the windows, we have an ordinance which prevents any more than, I think, 25% of a window to be covered in advertising and things. And that's a very easily enforceable one. And it's generally not enforced that well. There are some of the stores that have just like cover. You can't see inside them because they're covered. And that looks pretty, you know, I mean, we're not supposed to have storefront churches. And we have storefront churches on Dixie Highway. I mean, there's certain things that are fairly easy to enforce that we could be enforcing, which kind of brings up the pride as well. But the neighborhood, but maybe the neighborhood associations can be kind of
That's
a
all I had.
partner. Yeah. Okay, Mr. Diaz?
Yeah, beautification and pride, it's so important. Our alleyways as well. And I would always mention, I think, underneath a lot of our electric infrastructure, haven't not as bad as as years ago, but I do see mattresses pop up every once in a while. And it's all part of quality of life. I couldn't think of a more appropriate place for that, because it's a different flavor when you go from one neighborhood to the next, and one is clearly doesn't get the attention as others.
Well, not just that they don't have the attention, they have more incidents. and that
Incidents,
kind of
yeah.
stuff, right.
Yeah. And I look at things like the cemetery things, and it's quality of life, but I think a lot of it too is, I kind of almost want to look at it as infrastructure, because I look at a lot of that as things that need to happen. Not that quality of life things are things that aren't necessities, but it's like I look at, replacing the fences and things for security, and that's like a no-brainer. Just that has to happen. Like, and it's something that
Checkbook. Can I get funds from
I
you?
just want to win that $1 billion
I'll tell you,
thing.
Right.
yeah.
All the problems.
And I'll tell you, in the action list, I was blown away at how not expensive the Pinecrest fence was. I thought it was going to be a lot more.
I
Let me-
think it's a part of the.
Well,
It's
just,
just a part of it.
Gate.
But even the piece, yeah,
It's just a security gate.
yeah.
And then I got
But they're
the yellow
usually
caution
pretty
around it.
pretty up there in
Mhm.
price. And and to that degree, there's talk of, there's been a couple mentions of having a community center, and that's I'm a huge advocate of our library, of course, and the need for education, and as a community resource in a lot of regards, especially, we all know the struggles that our local schools are dealing with, and I really envision our library to fill that void in a really prominent way. And you look at these numbers, and they're not huge numbers, and they're really incredible programs. And I think it's a small taste of what they're capable of doing. And I think something that really should be an overall priority is to maximize the opportunity that our library can provide. And we can do that by, funding the payroll to keep it open as much as possible to continue these programs. But then, the staff there does such a good job of taking programs to
They're
schools.
amazing.
And I know they can just do so much more incredible stuff if we really put a lot of focus on it. And speaking of beautification, I'll just throw this out there is their building fund, it needs to be doubled. I mean, 10,000, it's an old building, and one tenting incident goes through it, that budget really quickly. So I think I would really like to talk about that. And this might be unpopular. I think I would love to hear from Lauren. Maybe
Tonight's your night.
have the conversation about, I feel like our library might be better suited if it was separate from leisure services.
Ooh.
To have our library department, so that it's a little bit less that Lauren has to handle, but also it's kind of like we're talking about two similar but different things. I don't know of really anywhere else where a public library is included in like a rec department, but I think there's a lot of education program opportunities available, and it could grow into something that's really big. So I think we need to have that conversation of how to grow that so that it's not too much of a burden on leisure services and whatnot.
Okay.
So you're volunteering.
In the checkbook. And we don't, okay, I mean, it's a suggestion. I think would be worth some conversation. Do you want to respond?
Here, I'm talking.
It's a pop quiz.
Good evening, Lauren Bennett, Director of Leisure Services Department. This conversation's actually come up a few times, and I've spoken with Cindy, and Cindy has expressed zero interest in separating from leisure. And I'll be honest with you, she's one of my least burdensome divisions. So I don't mind having the library. I enjoy working with her and the team. I don't find them as a burden at all. So
I like it when you guys can partner with bring the books to all the
Right.
different events
Yeah.
and trying to, because our library is trying to go more out into the community than staying just as building itself, side itself. So I think that's great.
Yeah, I guess what I'm getting at is like to be conscious, like if I didn't bring my checkbook and I don't know if I won Powerball last night, but doubling that library budget, not just the building budget, like I think that's a good goal to eventually get to that point. But I guess what I'm getting at is to be conscious of the growth, like to make sure it's something that isn't too burdensome. If it gets too big, like maybe something to keep an eye on, but it was just a
I don't
thought.
think it's be shy. I think she'll let us
Yeah.
know.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Mel. I was gonna make just one comment. We talked about the need, like you had mentioned, the need for a community center. That's part of what I would love to see, and it's very aspirational, a new city hall right over there. So we'd have a city hall with the fire, police, and our administrative offices, and this then could become the community center, which it started out as an auditorium. So I mean, that's kind of pieced together, so. And the other,
Is it gonna snow in the new city hall like it does in here? That's
Oh,
all I
geez.
really need.
listen, it's so funny because I talk about the city hall, which is, again, aspirational, but it's like, hey, first we gotta do the, and then we gotta do the casino, and then we gotta do the ADR, it's just, it just wrapping stuff up, a lot of stuff to get caught up on. I'm putting out there, I don't know why now, but August 4th, Friday morning, August 4th, at 9 o'clock, we're sponsoring a welcome breakfast for the middle school teachers. They're coming back to school that morning, so I'm gonna use some of my funds to cater to other people. Again, you're, Mr. McBoy, I just want to reiterate that invitation, so some of us are there.
I'm gonna pencil myself in because that's
The-
very close to a
that day.
significant date. Yeah.
Oh, here.
Beat the dog.
You have your light on.
I do, at the start.
Okay, great, thanks.
So.
Here, I'll give you my flashlight.
Context on, I think, again, I'm a context guy, help the community understand why we're focused on certain things. So for the quality of life, a piece of the context, I think, that comes to mind for me is, again, we've all said that we're very in favor of diversity. We appreciate the strengths that our diverse community bring to it. However, I think it's also okay to recognize that it has brought challenge at times. Different folks have different ideas of what works and what's okay and what's not okay. And that can create problems in neighborhoods. I felt like quality of life, it seemed like the list here didn't match all that well with the kind of things that I, over the years, have gotten a lot of calls, and they're typically from neighborhoods with concern. Some of them certainly a number of them we've talked about the beautification, the appearance of the city. That definitely in a number of areas is something that concerns residents. They just like to see it work better. My wife tells me, you never see bulk trash out in Miami. I think she's hallucinating, but I haven't researched it enough to know. It is something that people get concerned about. I'd say, well, you got to have some way to have people get stuff off, but we do see things that isn't out on bulk trash days. I think we've talked about that very much. The appearance, I think very much, again, the context one, we've talked about beautification. We've talked about it applying to code compliance, to enforcement, different things. I think it's so important. And I saw earlier, the person was here and I apologize, I can't remember her name. May it remind me the intern that you brought in.
Oh, Lena Trinidad.
Lena Trinidad, yes, was here earlier. The idea of, as we're enhancing maybe some of the code enforcement, some of the things we're doing it because we all want to make the city, and we need all hands on deck. And it's not that we don't want to have an adversarial relationship, we want to have an improving relationship. I think that's important to work in there. The website customer service thing, I can't emphasize enough. I've been raising it. One central number that you call, and that person is pretty knowledgeable. They have cross training and they steer you to Jamie or whoever. Jamie does it frequently. And I think the point was made that we as commissioners often get calls that really shouldn't be coming to us. If they're coming to us, that's kind of a reflection that our communication scheme isn't working altogether. Big one on quality of life is safety. Safety too, but trees, shade.
Yes.
You know, we've talked about it, but we haven't done anything to say, all right, what's our program for 1 million trees like New York City did and actually made a lot of headway on it. I agree. I've raised the issue as Bennett mentioned. I raised the issue that we should perhaps think about library / education / my favorite makerspace, where you have all sorts of things that kids can do, hands-on learning of electronics and machine shops and whatnot. Have that as separate department. On A, yes, I think it is important for us to be explicit that and maybe even throw a few bucks to it. Homeless support program, especially the crisis intervention team, the idea of can we use the very large part of our budget that goes to PBSO, can we perhaps find a way to take off some of the burden of things that's not really their first line of stuff, like dealing with mental health and dealing with crisis intervention? Can we find ways that other folks can take some of that burden so that they can be more focused on straight crime kind of things?
Not the city, though.
What's that?
Not the city taking them.
I don't know how, I'm very open to how we get to it. I'm perfectly fine with partnership
Well, we
with
talk
both
partnership.
NGOs and the county. I got no problem with that. I recognize that we have limitations of research. I've thought a lot, the mayor made a comment at a recent meeting that Commissioner Vice Mayor McBoy is not in your neighborhood. And that's true. That a lot of the homeless support things are concentrated around the Church of the Glades. It's really stepped up and made it possible to do some of that. And I wonder, is there a way that we could maybe rotate locations? I don't know if that's practical. The Church of the Glades has an awesome parking lot where you can do a lot of things.
Most
that really
churches
help
do.
out. But I hear the concern that, maybe that burden could get rotated around different parts of the community. If that comes from. Well, for instance, the Haitian Peniel Baptist Church, which is now at what used to be the Scottish Rites. If you go up there certain days of the week, I think it's a couple of days of the week, you will see that cars. Remember how during COVID we had cars parked at the parking lot near Hatch? They do it. I think nobody, if you didn't bike by there and kind of eyeball what's going on, you probably wouldn't know that there's food. It's a little different because it's car based, but
Which is a lot different.
I think, I hear that there are concerns. I think we as a community want to be very clear that we do recognize that there's all sorts of different humans, there's all sorts of different circumstances people are in. We're committed to compassion. We're also committed to trying to make sure that it works as best as possible for everybody. And that may require some adjustments of people, but we can spread that around. Let's look into that, but definitely keep that on the list. I think that's important.
Thank you. What's up next?
So, Madam Mayor, just to recap what I've heard.
All of that, you can wake up.
She's good. She's good. You got
No,
20 minutes.
just to summarize where I will go from here. So keep in mind, the objectives and the goals that are listed were based on conversations that were had in the previous workshop. So these items were items that you said you wanted to see accomplished. And so what we've done, we've created these as goals and also added the action items that we will implement to reach those goals that you wanted to see. So tonight we've gone over those. So I will be refining those goals. I'll be identifying identifying maybe additional related action items, just so you can be assured that we are working to make sure that goal is met. And then the other thing regarding the vision statement, I was unaware that one has been established by this commission. So what I'll do, I'll pull that out, review it. I'll send it to all of you as well, and you can look at it again.
Don't
And
make us change it. We agreed on.
We,
it.
I will say, we
did this.
Okay, so I'll change this statement. I will put it out and I will attach it with this
Thank you.
proposed plan. How about that?
This will go on the website once we've all agreed, and it will be a live document for all of the public to see, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And so then once it's approved, we will do that. We will make sure it's available for all to see. And then this document was certainly a conversation piece.
Mhm.
So once we solidify the document and the plan, what we will do was I most likely will reformat the action list. So it'll probably be easier to see the objectives, the goals, and then the action items related to that to those on one sheet. So you'll know what's being done to meet that goal. So there will be a layer and different versions, so we will know how to track and then also make it user friendly, so everyone will know what are we doing to make it happen.
And that follows on one of my notes that I hadn't talked about in terms of, we want this to be, we're saying that this is a different action, this is a different strategic plan because it's actually an action plan.
That's right.
So I'm wondering how, and I'm not looking for an answer right now, but I'm wondering, how will we maintain that level of accountability? A quarterly report? How?
Yes. I think
Not looking for an answer, but just that.
Yeah, we'll work what's reasonable. Certainly, we want to make sure that we're keeping track. So certainly we need a realistic periodic reporting process and schedule. Yeah, because I heard you earlier saying it's the small pace that's happening and you want to see more movement on items. And that was the purpose of this, to say, what do you want to see happen? And we'll put it down, document it, and give us that concrete direction and the progress to meet those directions. So that's what this is all about, to say, this is what we're doing, and we're going to check it off and say, we got it done.
So very good.
That's our goal.
Madam Mayor, I have one question.
Yep.
On the second part, on where you break down the numbers, the references, if we could just, for consistencies, on page 12, electric utilities very methodical on their improvements and where they're gonna be. And then if we jump over to other departments, not gonna call them out, it just has random raw water wells, right? And then it says roadway projects, 1.3 million. If we could at least get some kind of snippet of what roadway projects are included for that. And some of the places it shows where the funds are coming from, and other places it doesn't.
Yeah.
So if we could be consistent in that as well.
That's why I say we will be refining that part of it.
Yeah,
But we
if we
wanted
could
to
just be a
give you an
little more-
idea.
If we could just be a little more specific on where some of these projects are taking place, so the community sees that the money is being spread throughout the city, not just in one particular area. And this is the projects that you will see happening in this plan. Thank you. That's it.
I have a
apologize.
question for Mr. Waters. Do we have a fund that we could start that we could use to plant trees? I'm asking you, Giselle. Because I trust dogs more than I trust. Yes.
The record, William Waters, Community Sustainability Director. Actually, yes, we do. The tree board does have a fund that can support planting some trees. As we receive funds in the Sustainable Bonus Incentive Program that can fund trees. If we do infrastructure that includes trees, the Transfer Development Right Program can fund trees.
Okay, because I think we do talk about that a lot, and I think that would be, if we could figure out some way to, even on private property, I mean, it's not all the city, but just let's get them out there.
And we allocated money last year in ARPA to add to the tree canopy as well. And the IRA has a ton of money out there for tree planting and maintenance.
Yeah, and we're
IRA.
researching that.
Yeah,
Yes.
the Inflation Reduction Act
Oh,
had like 1 point something billion for tree. I mean, we need trees. It's hot.
Yeah.
It's the hottest
well,
summer.
the funny thing is,
And every summer is going to be the hottest summer of our lives
it's
forever.
never going to get better.
So
The funny thing is, and I've been coming here since 1967, we talk about restoring the tree canopy. I got to tell you, When these folks built their little cabins and houses like I live in, they did not want trees. They wanted palm trees because they were not here all the time and they were very low maintenance.
Mm.
So my sister and I kind of crack up about restoring the canopy. It's actually, developing a canopy, which I am a great fan of, if anybody knows my house.
Mhm.
So,
So, Madam Mayor, too, if I can say, keep in mind, this is a guide to help us also navigate through our budget process.
exactly. Yeah.
So we want to use this as well in working through our ARPA funds. We do have some remaining funds that we need to obligate.
Mhm.
And so we'll be talking specifically, as I said, on Monday about that. We do have a plan. I don't know if Yannick is. wants
He's
to
still here.
introduce anything or anything regarding ARPA right now, but we'll wait till Monday. Okay, so we'll wait till Monday. And so we'll use this, the items that we have here, we may want to consider
Mhm.
to obligate toward the remaining funds.
Right.
So we'll be talking through that on Monday.
Okay. And I just want to say one thing to the people in the audience
Oh.
and also the people out there.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. We have no, I don't want to mess up. We don't have public comment at this workshop, but we not obviously, but we really want to hear your opinions. So you have all our email addresses. So if you're out there and going, that's a stupid idea, or that's a great idea, let us know.
Yeah.
Because we're always looking for input from our citizens. And I'm just, extending that invitation. And
Madam
with that,
Mayor,
yeah.
and what I wanted to say, I can't leave this moment without first thanking the team.
Yeah.
Department heads,
Thank you very
their
much.
team, because the only way this happens is them. And so, so I appreciate them. They have read the goals that you want to meet. They've shared the items in which they felt was necessary to meet your goals, and they're dynamites. I just want to
Yeah.
thank you all. for
And I
your
think
work.
to point out, putting something like this together takes hours of work. In the
Absolutely.
meantime, they still have their jobs to do. So I wanted, extra
That's right.
points for that. Thank you
That's
very
right.
much. Okay,
Motion to adjourn.
do I have a second?
Oh, we don't need one. It's a work session.
It's a workshop. Good night.
That's correct. It
Thank
is
you.
7:50 and the meeting is adjourned.